This is a Fox News alert. A treasure trove of brand new documents belonging to Osama bin Laden released this morning. They were found the night that the Navy SEALs raided his compound in Pakistan, killing the terror leader. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Outnumbered. I'm Andrea Tantaros, and here with us today, Sandra Smith, Kimberly Guilfoyle, political commentator and national spokeswoman for the Libre Initiative, Rachel Campos Duffy, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, the perfect one today, Mike Baker, former CIA covert operations officer and president and co-founder of the private intelligence and security firm Diligence LLC. Mike Baker's Outnumbered.
Oh, after that title, that's all the time we got.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. We're outnumbered by your bio
Drive
points.
safely.
We are dying to hear what you think about these bin Laden documents that everyone's been poring over, so let's get right to the news.
Fascinating day.
Really fascinating. Now to those documents uncovered at Osama bin Laden's compound. The information released approximately 4 years after the 2011 raid that ended with the terror leader's death. Here he is in that compound. Those documents shedding new light on bin Laden's life and how he remained obsessed with attacking Americans until the very end. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now with the details. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Andrea. We're going document by document here at Fox, and so far, they paint a picture of bin Laden issuing orders from his compound in Pakistan, micromanaging to the smallest detail, and kind of wearing many managerial hats. This document, in fact, is an application to become a suicide bomber, asking the applicant for their history, their personal information, and even an emergency contact in the event that they do become a martyr. Another document reviewed by Fox shows how paranoid the al-Qaeda leader had become after more than a decade on the run and with a $25 million bounty on his head. One of his wives was coming from Iran to Pakistan for a visit, and he ordered that she leave all her personal belongings behind. Quote, everything that a needle might possibly penetrate. Some chips have been lately developed for eavesdropping, so small they could easily be hidden inside a syringe. Bin Laden also writes about the Arab Spring in 2012, and on the one hand, celebrates the overthrow of dictators like the Tunisian leader Ben Ali, while at the same time, there is this anxious tone, kind of a how will al-Qaeda remain relevant in this changing landscape. The documents recovered from the compound 4 years ago are being released now because legislation mandated their declassification. The former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Mike Flynn, recently told Fox's Bret Baier that millions of documents were recovered in Abbottabad, and there was a conscious decision not to exploit them at the time and review them, claiming that he was told basically to stop. What's more important, Flynn makes the assessment that the documents showed some operational connections between bin Laden and the affiliates that were operating in North Africa, East Africa, and Yemen, not that he was so isolated that he had lost control of the network. Andrea.
Catherine, really interesting stuff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, what jumps out at you the most reading these documents?
Well, first of all, you have to think about what the time frame is. So it's been going on 4 years since the raid on bin Laden. And some of this material he was writing ahead of the anniversary of 9/11, the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. So you have to put it in context there with now what's happening, right? Because some people have been amazingly quick. I mean, these things were just released, right? And some people are already out there saying, well, look, it shows that he doesn't agree with what the Islamic State is doing. Well, you're not, putting all of the time frame into context. There's no way he could have imagined what would have happened 4 years on from where he was writing at that point in time. But I think that part of what you're seeing is also just the musings of an individual who, while not completely isolated, was disconnected to some degree from the operational day-to-day. And so I think, in part, not to play, armchair psychologist, but I think he was looking for ways to be relevant in a sense. I think my favorite comment out of so far what we've seen is where he says, those Iranians, they can't be trusted. So if bin Laden knows that, then you'd like to think that our own administration would have a handle on it.
Before we open it up to the couch to ask more questions of you, I want to go back to something that you said, because this is what folks are focusing on. He encouraged al-Qaeda affiliates to abandon this caliphate. Now, this is the biggest goal of ISIS, and instead focus on killing Americans, bombing embassies, put the caliphate on hold, he said. Do you think that that led to the rise of ISIS? Because they said, you know what, we have different priorities here. The caliphate's the main goal. Bin Laden wants us to kill Americans. We're going to prioritize here. And do you think that could have led to the formation of what we're seeing now?
Well, no, I think what led to the formation now is the chaos that was created by a vacuum in Iraq. I mean, I don't think that's rocket science, but I think that, you know, he wanted a caliphate. Bin Laden yeah, he was all about the caliphate. You can argue in terms of how he felt about violence among the sects and about, you know, Shia, you know, fighting Sunni. But at the end of the day, well, he was no, I mean, he was you know, arguing against it often. But at the same time, would this now territorial, this physical manifestation of a caliphate, would it excite him? Now, of course it would. He would be looking for ways to capitalize on it from his perspective. There were always leadership battles within al-Qaeda. There were always efforts trying to figure out who was going to, you know, succeed him. But at the end of the day, they're all jonesing for the caliphate.
I thought it was really interesting. What stuck out to me is I'm always following the money trail when it comes to these terrorist groups, and when it comes to al-Qaeda, it appears by some of the memos that were written to Osama bin Laden that they were strapped for cash. Al-Qaeda members were actually writing, in one memo, they clearly wrote that there's this financial problem, it was written. And Osama bin Laden stressed that he was concerned about the effects of climate change on the Muslim world, talking about let's not deplete the precious groundwater. He was talking about ways to store wheat, because he was fretting about food security was often what he was writing about. Yeah. The finances behind al-Qaeda were obviously a huge concern for him.
Well, yeah, and that's you know, they've solved that problem in part by having physical territory, right? Because that gives them revenues, whether it's through extortion, criminal activity, the oil and gas revenues that we've been hearing about. You know, you also have to look in terms of why release this now. And I don't want to sound skeptical. Yes, I do. But they've had this information for a long time. The first thing you do when you sweep up all this material is you immediately look for actionable leads, right? You immediately look for, oh, that's the compound in Abbottabad calling.
Is that Mrs. Baker?
Yeah, no, otherwise I would take that call, even on national TV. I apologize. But what you do is you sweep up all that intel, and you immediately look for actionable leads. You immediately look for anything that's going to be perishable. And then you start going through everything, you prioritize, and you layer it in different tiers to use that. 3 years on, 3.5 years on, we're now seeing some of this material. And I can't help but think that the reason this is happening is because the administration needs some good news. They're doing a deflection, which they have done many times in the past.
To remind the American public of their biggest...
Well, yeah, they're taking a beating on everything else going on in Middle East strategy. Oh, look at this. Did you see the bin Laden documents?
Yeah, but now we're in a worse position than we were before. And despite the gains that we had made, we let it go. We let it slip through our hands because this administration was reluctant to have a real plan and focus on terror in the Middle East. And you've seen ISIS step into what you have described as the vacuum in Iraq, and it's dispersed. I mean, it's really spread and metastasized.
Right, absolutely.
I think one of the interesting things that came out of this was, you know, who knew that terrorists actually love some of their wives? I thought that the interesting love letters to...
well, he had many to love.
One of them. Yeah. I found it really interesting. But what do these documents tell you about how we should be adjusting our strategy? I think that's really the bottom line question that a lot of Americans have.
Well, I mean, you know, again, we can parse... We can look at the personality issues and the psychology of it all, bin Laden sitting in there, and hopefully there's nothing actionable in the material that we're getting right now. It's all been, you know, scrubbed clean, and any leads were used, and that's a good thing. What we need to do now in terms of strategy is we need to win. First, we need to find a strategy. Then once we have that strategy, we need to act it out. And